Welcome back to the Geelong Regional Footy Show. I'm Wes Cusworth. This is the final segment of our program, and we're joined by Josh Conway from the Geelong Football League. And as I made mention at the top of the panel discussion, you got to see clearly the best side of the competition in action again. But was it against the second best side in the competition, or have you got other views on that one?
Yeah, look, going into the weekend's games, St Joe's and St Mary's, in my opinion of watching a fair bit of them this season, I thought they were the second best team in it. Bell Park and Colac sitting third and fourth coming into the game with the other two, and I just didn't think they were quite at St Mary's level. But then on the weekend, it's either a reflection of how good St Joe's are, or maybe St Mary's aren't as good as perhaps I took them for. Lost by 44 points, second time they've met Joey's this year, and it's a combined margin over the two games of 100 points. So the gap from first to second, if you just look at it purely on the ladder, it doesn't bode well for St Mary's. They dropped from second to fourth as well on the ladder, so that hurts their double chances coming into finals. So Bell Park and Colac, who both won, leapfrogged them on the ladder. Which makes the last round of games this weekend even more important.
Which begs the question: what do sides like Bell Park and St Mary's need to do differently? They clearly need to do something different, don't they? I mean, you can't just keep repeating the same sort of game strategy and then going in and expecting things to change. What do they need?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, they get a few back, St Mary's, this week. They get three key players, Sam Dobson notably, who only played the 7 games in the first half of the year before getting called up to VFL duty.
Quality play.
Absolutely. Averaged 5.5 goals a game in his 7 outings, kicked 32, I think it was. And just far and away the best forward in the competition when he's playing. So they get him back this week due to the VFL finishing up. They get Paddy Dowling back, an impressive youngster with the midfield, and Trent McMullen has also come back from VFL duty. So they get 3 key players back. As for game style and the like, Troy Mitchell was pretty unhappy with his players after the game and sort of forecast some changes. He was really unhappy with a few players without naming some names. He was saying, there's a few out there that he's put a line through for the rest of the season, which is interesting. So, and Ben Dobson's another one as well, who I should mention, out for the year with an ACL injury. Opposite end to his brother, opposite end of the ground, plays a half-back role, but another superb player, represented Vic Country this year in the Interleague, and an Essendon VFL player as well. So him going out also hurts their chances. So at the moment, there's no real reason for me to change my tip, which isn't going out on a limb, to select St Joe's as the premier for this year.
Nice and conservative. Very good, Alex.
But just on St Mary's, I want to keep it there. I think the biggest surprise in the last probably 24 months for me, taking a step outside the comp, is to see St Mary's go from that probably 9th spot to make last year's grand final, and now, they're probably one of the favourites for the place of grand finalist. How much does Troy Mitchell have to do with it, since joining Bryce Vincent, now taking on a lot of the duties? And how much do their powerhouse Colts have to do with it as well? How many of those former premiership players from your age group feature in the senior side?
Yeah, look, you nailed it. Bryce and Troy, when they were both co-coaching, and now Troy just by himself, they had a very clear plan to trust their youth and back their youth prospects. That the point system coming in sort of forced clubs to go away from recruiting the big name player from different leagues and sort of trying to push up those young players. And as you say, ever since I can remember playing junior footy, St Mary's have always had strong juniors, and they've all come through, which is important. They've all hung around as a collective, which is key. So only all worth 1 point pretty much. Paddy Dowling, a guy I mentioned, the McMahon trio are all St Mary's juniors. So look, that's probably the big thing from them that's led them to this sort of success, and they won't be going anywhere anytime soon. They'll be around for a few years to come.
St Albans, they're still looking for a new coach for next year. Do you have any insights on that at the moment?
No, don't have any inside scoops. They're not the only GFL club looking for a new coach. South Barwon is another one who are looking. Leopold with Steve Otis, their premiership coach, stepping down. I saw during the week Bell Park have re-signed Tim Sheringham for next year, so they're one that don't need a new coach. But there's 5 clubs looking for a new coach. So usually you're lucky in 1 year to get a club looking for a coach, but with 5 it's going to be hard for each club to get the candidate that they want. And St Albans are in a difficult sort of boat. That they've got an interesting list. The demographics not quite very clear, but they won the 6 games this year, which is an improvement on 2016. So there's a bit to work with there with the Super Saints.
Just on the coaches, what's been Tim Sheringham's? What makes him stand out? Because he's the longest serving coach now in the GFL. I reckon he got appointed with Ben Armstrong after 2011.
Yep, he did.
200 games, and he's probably played about 120 as coach. When you talk to him, what stands out in your opinion?
Yeah, he's got a superb football intellect. I know it's an easy thing to say, but he really does understand the game really intricately. And along with Luke Rayner, who's also an equally adept footy mind. I think they just get game trends and styles. Bell Park have never had a lull. They've always been a bit like Sydney in the AFL. They've always been a consistent final performer and never really have a drop off. So a lot of that can be attributed to Tim Sheringham.
Yep.
And did you have any further information with regard to Leopold and the way they're travelling heading into the final stages of the season?
Yeah, so going into last weekend, they just needed to win one of their last two games to assure themselves of the fifth spot with North Shore bearing down. They beat Newtown on the weekend, so the top five is now set in stone in the GFL. North Shore lost by 90 points on the weekend too, so even if Leopold had lost, that was all she wrote for the final five, so that's all set. Look, they're still teetering. I'm not quite sure about them with their finals aspirations, but what I will say is I don't think anyone will want to play them in an elimination final. They're one of those teams that they could just click it on the wide expanse of Simmons Stadium. They're well suited to that, and I don't think any team will want to face a reigning premier in an elimination final. That's for sure.
North Shore, I was heartbroken to see they couldn't make it, given they'd only won the one game for the 2 years prior. Has Jason Davenport any chance for Coach of the Year, given all that he's done? And he's going to love me for bringing this up as well.
He will love you for bringing that up. Look, just another thing on his CV and his list of accolades. He's an incredible footballer and, as we know, and coach now, doing a fantastic job with North Shore. Nice little segue, Alex. I was just going to talk about North Shore and how they've regenerated their list this year. They've trusted some youngsters, and along with Newtown, who have another team who have really backed heavily with their youngsters. More than half of their 22 each week are playing with kids under the age of 22. So there's not much experience with those two teams, but it's both worked. They've both won over 7 games this year. And look, they've gone about it the right way. Newtown haven't always traditionally been a side that have backed their youth. They've gone out and use their resources, which are allowed to do it, and get some bigger name players. But Dane McMahon, the new coach for this year, has come in and said, look, we're just going to back our youth, and it's worked this year. So they and North Shore will be hanging around. Grovedale, the other side, outside the 5, who have had a year from hell preliminary final last year, down to 8th this year. It's a real fall from grace with a better list on paper. They got the Delaney brothers straight from the AFL system. They got Daniel Key from North Geelong, a guy who you know really well, and they've just gone backwards from there. So they too, in the second half of the season, have tried to blood some Colt players in a hope that they can get them through the system. But they're probably the 3 teams that could really start pushing the top 5 from this year.
How do you see the first week of the finals playing out?
Yeah, look, it's interesting. A lot of it depends on this final round of matches with St Mary's need to win to make sure they get into the 3rd spot in the qualifying final place. Otherwise, it's an elimination final against Leopold, and Bell Park and Colac face each other to place for the 2nd or 3rd position on the ladder. So interesting. There's still a few jigsaw pieces left in the puzzles, what I'm trying to spit out. So interesting to see what will happen this weekend. But I suspect St Mary's will get the better of Grovedale, so I think that they'll avoid the elimination final and they'll get the double chance, which they probably deserve after the season they've had.
Speaking about finals, we can book in the 4 weeks for Simmons Stadium.
Yes, it was announced during the week. Well done, Alex.
Good.
Thanks for reminding me.
No.
Kenya Park Trust and AFL Barwon came to an agreement finally. Simmons Stadium has changed hands since the last finals series, so there was a few bits of paperwork to be sorted out and whatnot, but that's all right. So originally it was planned to have West Oval hosting the first week of finals. That's out of play now. It's all going to be at Simmons Stadium, which is great. Wonderful facilities there, and a real treat for any player, no matter how many times he played there, to step onto the turf and play the big finals at the biggest ground in the region.
And before we wrap up your segment, let us know where you're heading this weekend.
Yeah, should say every week, Kicks 89.3 FM, your home of country footy. Got a big game, Bell Park and Colac at Bell Park this weekend. So huge game. Tune in from 2 p.m. this Saturday.
And Alex Tagani, where is the GDFL going?
I was just going to say with the Simmons Stadium thing, whereas Josh was telling me off, that was completely his leadership that got us over the line. No, I'm only joking. Look, 94.7 The Pulse. We've got 2 games, Bellpost Hill and Bannockburn, grand final rematch on Saturday. And on Sunday, we have Thompson and North Geelong. And if you have the TuneIn Radio app, you can listen to the game from around the world, wherever you are, Wes.
Fantastic. Thanks, lads. And thank you to you, our viewers, for tuning in here on Channel 31. I hope you've enjoyed the coverage. This is the Geelong Regional Footy Show. We'll catch you next week.
We come together, the best from all the league, to show them how to play and form a mighty team. The pride of our region with all our favourite sons, never ever beaten, Australia's number 1. We'll get the goals, boys, right from the jump, if we use some handball and never shirk a bump. So give it all your best.